Nearly everyone knows somebody or knows someone who's been impacted by breast cancer, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. On today's show, we'll tell you about an ETF that donates its net profits to fighting the disease. Plus, you'll learn about the personal journey of an ETF battle judge that's dear to us, Shana Sissel with Banríon Capital, right after this. I'm Ron DeLegge with ETF Guide TV, and 99% of all statistics only tell us 49% of the story 100% of the time, which means the other 51% of the story has to be explained. And what we know is this, folks, that finances, investing, our health, our psychology, and our overall well-being are tightly bound. Here to elaborate is Shana Sissel with Banríon Capital. You also know her as one of our trusted judges on ETF battles. Shaina, great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it.
Now, before we discuss the pink ETF from Simplify, tell us more about your story and familiarize our audience about your own personal journey and battle with cancer.
Sure. So as you mentioned, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is the first October that I am a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed last December, and it's been kind of a wild ride. I was diagnosed following a several months period of having really severe back pain. And most doctors had told me that it was stress because my boyfriend at the time had just passed. And it was immediately following his death that this started. So nobody really took me all that seriously. I had to see 6 different doctors before one really took any intellectual curiosity and was like, yeah, let's see if we can figure out why you're in so much pain. It turned out I had a tumor growing in my spine. They call them lesions in the medical profession. And it shattered my vertebrae. I had to have my back fused from T4 to T10 because T6, 7, and 8 were fractured or burst. So several of them had been shattered completely, so non-replaceable. And so I had to have my spine rebuilt. And when they were doing the surgery, they removed the tumor, sent it for biopsy. I also had bone biopsies done. It took kind of a while to get the results. And during that time, the doctors were trying to figure out what was wrong with me because they kept scanning me, MRIs, CT scans, to try to figure out, like, where is the primary cancer? And they couldn't really find anything. But the oncologist came and did like a breast exam in my hospital room one day. And he mentioned, he's like, hey, did everyone ever tell you that your left breast is heavier than your right? They're a little asymmetrical. And I just thought to myself, like, of course they are. They're not twins. They're not going to be identical. So of course one's going to be a little different. No one has symmetrical boobs, not even people with fake ones. It's just, with gravity and everything.
Yeah. And our hands and our feet are not identical or symmetrical either, right?
Exactly. So our eyes aren't.
The body parts, although they may look very similar, they are by volume quite different.
Exactly. So, that was the only kind of indication that he felt something a little off, but there was no lump or anything. So, it wasn't until I received the biopsy results after my surgery, a couple days after, that I was informed that I had stage 4 breast cancer, that, there was a primary tumor that we had to go find because it didn't show up on any scans, but we were pretty sure it was going to be the left side because that's the side that he mentioned felt a little off. And we ended up finding what was called a malignant calcification. Now, if I just had that, I would have been considered stage 0. But it's not what I had. It somehow, some way, that very small malignant calcification spread to my back, and subsequently ended up being diagnosed stage 4, which is pretty advanced. And stage 4 is considered terminal. Now, I have a nuanced diagnosis. I have what's called oligometastatic breast cancer, which is a little bit different. It actually is considered curable. Oligo means that it hasn't spread to many places. It's less than 5 areas of spread. So in my case, I had one spot on my left breast, one lymph node, and just the one tumor in my spine. So I had three, and so that means that I am considered curable and I am treated as such. And since July of this year, I have no evidence of disease. My scans are completely clean. So I'm feeling good, but it wasn't without its battles. I had to do radiation. I have to take something called a CDK4/6 inhibitor. And there's a couple of major pharmaceutical companies that make their own version. I happen to take Verzenio. I take hormone suppressant therapy because I have HR positive breast cancer, hormone receptor positive, which means that it uses my estrogen to feed the cancer. So you got to remove the food source. And so all of those things have taken their toll for sure. But I'm here, I'm cancer free. And, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Now, what about your just day-to-day routine? I mean, obviously, when you get a diagnosis of this magnitude, I mean, it affects the way, you eat, the way you think, your daily routine. Tell us how that's gone for you.
It's really important to have a really good support system and to maintain positive energy around you. One of the things when I was first diagnosed that I made it a point of doing was really limiting who I told. And it's not because I was keeping it a secret, but more because the worst thing you can do for someone who has a cancer diagnosis is tell them about somebody that had a similar diagnosis that didn't have a good outcome. I didn't want to hear any of that because mindset plays a huge role in your ability to make it through, and for your immune system to work at at the best way it can. So I was very, very protective of the energy around me and focused solely on allowing people who, like me, never doubted that I was going to be fine. But it was hard, especially in the beginning. I'm not necessarily an active cancer treatment anymore. I still have to get my Zoladex shots and I still have to take, a bunch of medication, but I don't have to do radiation or anything anymore. But I did have to do 6 weeks of radiation through January and most of February. And that was very physically exhausting. It takes a massive physical toll. There's all kinds of side effects from the medications I take that, I have to deal with. For the most part, I haven't had many, but there have been a few, and you got to work with your doctors in particular to address those things. And it's just really important to educate yourself, but don't overdo it. So I remember my oncologist, the day he told me my diagnosis, told me not to go and look at survival rates because the types of things and the innovations they've made in cancer therapy and cancer treatments today are quite different than even 5 years ago. And most of those survival rates are based on, 10, 20 years ago where the treatments were substantially different. The advances in molecular biology or oncology is super important because everybody has very unique, just like your fingerprint, tumor DNA. And so my tumor and anybody else's tumor is going to be different. And so their treatments are different based on that tumor profile. And then with breast cancer, there's all kinds of different breast cancer. It's true with any cancer. But in my case, I have hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative breast cancer. There's also hormone receptor positive, HER2 positive breast cancer. There's hormone receptor negative, HER2 positive. And then there's something called triple negative. And then there's something lobular versus ductal. Those things all matter in terms of treatment protocols and things of that nature. So being educated is important, but understanding that the treatments today are very advanced. And my oncologist told me once, her goal is to keep me alive long enough for the next treatment until there's a cure. And that has been true. And breast cancer, as she said, is not a terminal illness these days. It's more like a chronic disease. And so, it's important for me to do what's right and be here. Obviously, I have a young son and I want to see him grow up. But I also have been very educated and know all the different potential treatments I can take and have opinions and discuss them with my doctor. And, quality of life is as important as living in general. Nobody wants to live a miserable life. So you want to really balance the treatments that are going to get you better, but also maintain a level of quality of life. And I've been really fortunate in that having good friends in the biotech industry as investors and so on, as well as just being educated and reading, and having just the greatest team of medical professionals around me has allowed me to make what I think are good choices, get me to the point where I'm no evidence of disease, but do so in a way where my quality of life is still quite good.
So Shaina, for viewers watching this who have themselves been diagnosed with breast cancer, or maybe they know somebody that is undergoing that, what advice or words of encouragement would you like to offer them?
Well, I think the number one thing is don't compare yourself to other people with the same disease. As I noted, everybody's tumor is very different, and all of the idiosyncrasies of your genetic history, the genetics of your tumor, and so on and so forth matter in your treatment protocol. And so it's really important not to compare your outcomes to someone else's. I was able to achieve no evidence of disease in a 7-month period of time, which is not normal. And there are women who have less advanced cancer that don't have that kind of remarkable outcome so quickly. I don't know why that is. I'm sure it has something to do with my specific type of cancer and the DNA associated with it. But I think that's number one. Number two, educate yourself and advocate for yourself. Don't take your doctor's suggestions blindly. I always say, don't automatically say yes, but also don't automatically say no.
And also, too, let's not forget, as you had earlier mentioned, I mean, you went through what, like 6 doctors before you finally got to, I mean, how frustrating was that? Like, did that test your confidence level in like traditional medicine? Like, were you like, what's the matter with these people?
Oh, absolutely. Advocate for yourself. If you know something's wrong, like make sure and keep going until somebody listens. That's what I had to do. It took a couple months. Probably could have saved my spine if the first doctor had been even remotely intellectually curious. But that's neither here nor there. Advocate for yourself. But again, also understand your options. I've had conversations with my doctor over my treatment options. For example, I get asked a lot why I didn't have a mastectomy. There's 2 reasons. Number one, I had just had massive reconstructive back surgery. So, after completely having to learn to walk again and having my spine rebuilt, doing the front directly in front was not really something I was looking forward to. Number 2, I didn't really have a mass to remove. I had a small malignant calcification, and by the time I started radiation, it had resolved itself, so it wasn't even really there. So there really wasn't anything to remove. And so they opted not to have a mastectomy, which, a lot of women who get diagnosed with breast cancer just automatically are like, oh, got to get a mastectomy. Like, not necessarily. In fact, there's plenty of studies that show that proactive mastectomies don't make a bit of difference. It depends on your case and how your tumor is and so on and so forth. Now, with that said, I did radiation. I didn't do chemo because, again, my tumor had specific biomarkers that meant it wasn't going to be conducive to chemo. I do have to do hormone suppression therapy, which I wasn't excited about. And my doctor's first thing was you need to do an aromatase inhibitor and a CDK4/6 inhibitor. But I didn't want to take an aromatase inhibitor. That's a estrogen degrader, meaning it just kills all of my estrogen production completely. Because I was premenopausal, I didn't want that. So I took tamoxifen, which is made for women like me, and it's not as it's a estrogen receptor blocker, so it doesn't kill off your estrogen per se. It's a bit better for premenopausal women than an AI. And then, the CDK4/6 inhibitors, there's 3 of them: Ibrance, Verzenio, and Kisqali. And they have very different side effect profiles and outcomes. Kisqali and Verzenio have very good outcomes. Ibrance, it depends on your cancer type. But one thing is for sure, they all have some pretty gnarly side effects. And a lot of the studies require that you just start with a max dose. And then if you don't respond well to it, or you have bad side effects, they reduce your dose. But I really fought to do the opposite. I started on a very low dose and we gradually increased it to a point where we feel we're okay. I'm still not on a max dose, but I also don't have any horrible side effects like many other people that would start off with the much higher doses. Because if you start off with the highest dose and you have horrible side effects, there's a really good chance that you won't even continue because you've been burned. The quality of life is so bad. And so, I really worked with my doctors to make these decisions. My doctor and I fundamentally disagreed on how to start off with the CDK4/6 inhibitors. And I actually didn't want to do them at all after reading about them. I still have not agreed to do bone strengthening infusions, Zometa, because everything I've heard about it is awful. But that's something she recommended, and I just didn't want to do it from a quality of life standpoint. So, these are things you have to think about. My bones might be a little more brittle, but I think working out, vitamin D, vitamin C, let's see what happens. I wasn't excited to have something that's going to make me sick for days every time I take it. That could potentially cause my jaw to have necropathy, and your jaw just starts to fall apart. Not fun. These are all very common side effects of Zometa, and I just didn't want to deal with it. So I opted out of that. And these are the kind of conversations you have to have with your doctor to see, how things go and how you respond to your initial treatments. And that's the thing about cancer therapy today. There's so many options. If something doesn't work for you, there's usually 2, 3, 4 other options you can go to. And they keep such close eyes on you. I get scanned every 4 months that, they can tell pretty quickly if something's working or not.
Correct. Yeah. And it's finding that combination of it's not one thing, but a combination of multiple things that are hopefully working to get you feeling better and getting you to that clean diagnosis. So let's talk about the Simplify Healthcare ETF, ticker symbol PINK, which invests in these groundbreaking and innovative companies that are in the biotech sector, med tech, along with gene therapy and other fast-growing healthcare-related sectors that are searching for therapies to battle and conquer cancer. So the fund also has a unique approach to how it operates on the fee side. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Simplify, full disclosure, is a client of Banrion's. And I kind of discovered this fund talking about my story with the folks over at Simplify. They told me about the fund, and I was really blown away. It is the only pro bono ETF in the healthcare space. It might be the only pro bono ETF in general, to be honest, but it is a remarkable a fund where all of the net profits from the fund go directly to the Susan G. Komen Foundation for Breast Cancer Research. It's run by Michael Taylor. He does it pro bono. He's not paid to run the fund. And he's a extremely well-known, extremely accomplished hedge fund manager in the healthcare and biotech space. In fact, before he started investing in biotech stocks, he actually was a scientist helping with clinical trials related to all kinds of different research into chronic disease and cancer and things of that nature. So he's very adept at this space. The fund actually has a great track record and a reasonable expense ratio at 50 basis points. So any of the profits go directly to the Susan G. Komen Foundation. And it's important to note that even if there are no profits, there's a guarantee of a minimum $100,000 donation on an annualized basis to the foundation on behalf of the fund. So it's going to a great cause. It is not specifically investing in things related to breast cancer. It's biotech in general. And I think that's an important caveat, but I think it's a great cause. It's got a great manager and great overall returns to date. So definitely one worth taking a look at. And for someone like me who is looking at my, what way could I have an impact to tell my story, which made sense for me. This ETF kind of stood out as a way for me to kind of have a little impact on cancer research and raising funds for cancer research.
Definitely. And I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with our audience your personal journey, which we're all following you and rooting for you. And also, of course, bringing to our attention a ticker symbol PINK, which is directly involved in investing in these types of companies that are specifically searching for therapies to battle cancer. So again, thanks for taking the time, Shaina, to be with us. And we look forward to having you back on ETF Guide TV very soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Ron, and letting me tell my story, and also for talking about the Pink Fund. Like I said, it's near and dear to my heart, and I think definitely worth a second look, especially given that all of the proceeds, the net profits of the fund, go towards breast cancer research.
Shana Sissel with Banríon Capital. with us on today's program. I'm Ron DeLegge with ETF Guide TV. Hit us up in the comment section below. Let us know how you enjoyed today's episode. Do you know someone in your family or a friend that's battling breast cancer? Tell us your story. We'd like to hear about that. Again, post in the comment section below. You can also find us on our X feed at ETF Guide. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next show.